The Big 12 is a lot like your high school girlfriend. Confusing, weird, crazy, but kind of hot. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into Was that too much? Was it the high school? Was it? You get it. You've been there. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. I'm Drake Toll from ESPN Central Texas, and I'm growing a mullet. And TCU fell to Texas Tech. The Red Raiders held on last night to get another Big 12 win, one that is something that has come sparingly to Texas Tech this season. They are 3-3 in conference play. TCU now drops to 2-4. Let's not just break this down today, but let's go through every matchup in the Big 12 because I have some bold predictions for a big Saturday in this conference. I had a BYU fan in my Twitter mentions drop one of the great lines early on of this season, which is, as a BYU fan, I'm really confused. That from Mattitude. And you know what? As a fan of every other Big 12 team, somebody who's been credentialed for 5 years and seen all of these teams play over the course of the last half decade, which is, I'm making a thing, I too, Mattitude, am very confused. What do you do with this? I've told you, I thought Texas Tech, if you're an everydayer, you know, I thought Texas Tech was going to vie for a conference championship. I also thought TCU was going to be a top 4-5 team in the Big 12. How do you follow up a trip to the national championship game? This is something that no other Big 12 team has ever done in the college football playoff era. That is, go to the national championship game. You've now followed it up, TCU, by going 4-5. I do want to give some credit here to Josh Hoover. If you watch the game, you know that Josh Hoover is a gamer. I believe he showed flashes, especially late, of Max Duggan. And somebody out there is screaming, crying, throwing up that I would say this. How would I slander the great name of Max Duggan, the TCU legend? But bear with me a bit here. His ability to run the football in a hard-nosed way, fight for yardage, hard-nosed way, put his body on the line. In the third quarter, he was dicing up the Texas Tech defense. The guy looked comfortable for the first time of the game during the third quarter and threw over 100 passing yards in that quarter alone. I do want to mention here, too, he's a true freshman who threw 52 passes in a road Big 12 game. I give a lot of credit to what Josh Hoover did. And need I remind you, when Max Duggan was young, he wasn't doing this stuff. Or if he did, it was few and far between. Josh Hoover throwing for 353 yards. Duggan for a long time was just bad and eventually developed himself into a legitimate threat as the TCU quarterback. I think Josh Hoover's going to get there. That's a positive I took away from TCU. For Texas Tech, thank you. Thank you for finally giving the ball to Taj Brooks. I say finally loosely. I know this isn't the first time that Taj Brooks has gotten to carry the rock this season. He had 105 against BYU, had 170 against Baylor. But 31 carries, which I think is around where he was for BYU, is what he needs to stay at for the rest of this season. He had that against Baylor. He couldn't really get that against Kansas State because Tech was playing from behind. And I know they lost that BYU game. But to me, this team does go as Taj Brooks goes, especially because Baron Morton, despite having a pretty good game last night, is not exactly what I wanted him to be. He's the backup quarterback. He was a backup quarterback to Tyler Shuck for a reason. Now the starter. And I thought Baron Morton should have been the starter from the beginning because he could have been a world beater. He has a higher ceiling to me than Tyler Shuck does, and he just hasn't performed to the level that I've expected. Now, there are reasons for that. The Texas Tech receiving core has not been as good as we expected. The Texas Tech defense has not put the offense in good enough positions. You might push back on that based on the BYU game. BYU's offense is terrible, running the football especially. Baron Morton, 28 for 36, 282 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. This was a fun quarterback battle. The end of this game comes down to Texas Tech's defensive ability to stop the run. TCU could only carry the ball 26 times because it was playing from behind. And more than anything, that TCU lead there at 21-20, more than anything, I'm impressed that Texas Tech didn't just bounce back, but bounce back with an absolute fervor, blowing it to 35-21 with 15 consecutive points. And then when TCU gets the ball back at the very end, they took advantage of the fact that Baron Moore, I was worried that Joey McGuire was going to go for it on a 4th and 7 from the TCU 48. Luckily, he didn't. He punted. And you trusted your defense. Josh Hoover throws his second interception of the game. That first interception, 100% arm punt. Terrible. The second one, you're taking a true freshman, putting him in a 2-minute drill, who has already got 353 yards this game and saying, hey, look, we know you're young. We know you don't have a ton of experience. We know that our receiving core, the TCU receiving core, isn't exactly elite. Can you please go win us the game? So I give a free pass on that second interception. And holistically, if you're a fan of another team, you're listening right now and you're going, I didn't watch the game. Why should I care? Thank you for being here, making it this far. Holistically, this game is the embodiment of what the Big 12 has been this season. And that is, my roommate, who doesn't know a lot of Big 12 ball, looked over at me and said, man, the Big 12, all these teams are just mediocre this season. And I thought I could, obviously he doesn't listen to Locked On Big 12. I could go through and try to explain to him the nature of what the Big 12 is this year, because it's an uninformed take to say the Big 12 is just mediocre. I would say the Big 12 leans on parity. There are a lot of really equal teams, and I could try to explain that and unpack that to him. Give him examples of like a BYU getting shellacked by TCU and then beating Texas Tech the next week. Things like that just are weird and random. But it takes a while to explain. We know, you and I know, the everydayers, you know what the Big 12 is, the personality of this conference, and it's this game. Now Texas Tech, who could have been a contender, still on the backside. They're 8th in conference play right now. Still on the backside of the standings at 4-5 overall, might have a shot at a bowl game. Selfishly, if TCU wins this game, we know the Frogs are getting to a bowl. Now, both these teams might miss a bowl game. Tech still needs 2 more wins. They got to go to Kansas, a top 25 team. They host UCF. You should win that one. They go to Texas, a top 10 team. Odds, likelihoods, Tech should go 1-2 in those matchups, finish the season at 5-7 overall, missing a bowl game. For TCU, a team that needed this win desperately to go to a bowl game, now dropping to 4-5, they've got to play Texas, a top 10 team. They've got to play Baylor at home, which they should win. Then they have to go to Oklahoma, which on paper they lose. So with the outcome of this game, the Big 12 might have just lost 2 bowl teams instead of just one, right? If TCU wins this game, they're probably going to beat Baylor at home. They're going to finish 6-6. You lose Texas Tech as a bowl contender. Now, each of these teams, according to ESPN, will finish 5-7, kicking another Big 12 team out of bowl contention. So if we look right now, there are 5 teams who've already clinched a bowl berth. 4 of those teams, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma, I'll give Texas to whatever, are squarely in the conversation for a Big 12 championship. Kansas has an outside shot, West Virginia an outside shot, then Iowa State, who's still not bowl eligible, but still has an outside shot at the Big, or a really good shot at the Big 12 championship, actually at 4-1, anchors the fact this conference is very even, especially at the top. From Kansas State, Texas, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma all being tied, making Bedlam a huge game. Making Kansas State and Texas a huge game. And Iowa State, that dark horse there who has a tough rest of the road, a tough next 4 games with an opportunity to go to a Big 12 championship or completely fall out of bowl eligibility. That's the madness that is the Big 12. I enjoy watching it. I hope you do too. Coming up, final Bedlam. Let's give it to Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I go to find last-minute tickets at the lowest prices guaranteed. Right now, you shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets to your next big event. I went to the World Series. And saw the Texas Rangers play the Arizona Diamondbacks thanks to Game Time. Create memories for yourself. Create memories for your family. Go to concerts, comedy, theater events, killer last-minute deals, all kinds of all-in great prices, views from your seat. Game Time is there for you. I love the idea that I can go get flash deals and zone deals, last-minute tickets, and it makes it so easy. I know when I show up to the venue, hey, it starts in 30 minutes. I can still get tickets, and they're going to be cheaper than they were 5 hours ago. 5 hours. You can get an event ticket an hour after the event starts with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's right. Download the Game Time app. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. I think Oklahoma State is going to beat Oklahoma this week. Is that bullish? Yes. Should Oklahoma State probably lose this game by double digits based on the talent disparity between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State? Yes. Does this being a day game do zero favors for the Cowboys? You're asking great questions here. The answer is still yes. On paper, to me, this should not be as close of a spread as it is. It should not be a 6-point Oklahoma spread. On paper, it should be 10 or more favored to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, according to ESPN's FPI matchup predictor, has an 80% chance of victory in this game. OU, by all intents and purposes, should not just beat Oklahoma State, but should blow out the Cowboys in Stillwater this week. And not only will that not happen, Oklahoma State will win this game. Kansas just showed us the blueprint. What Kansas just did to Oklahoma proves that this Sooner team is susceptible to poor play in big moments. What I thought about Oklahoma is they're opportunistic. BYU is a great example of a team that's usually opportunistic, especially at night. For OU, who's got Dylan Gabriel, who's got this old, experienced quarterback, the best quarterback in the Big 12, to go 2-10 against Kansas on third down. KU brought the heat. They brought the pressure. They said, look, in big scenarios and big moments, we're going to force the hand. I know weather played a factor in that game. I know weather certainly played a factor. But if you look at the offensive output, Oklahoma had 440 yards. Kansas had 443. You're pushing 900 yards of combined offense. And you're going to sit back and tell me, yeah, the weather was a big part of this. Big part, sure. But my high school coach used to say it. The elements should never control how you play. They can tweak your game plan, but I don't go, oh yeah, look at this really good old quarterback Dylan Gabriel. I'm going to give him a free pass. The weather was kind of crappy against Kansas in Lawrence. No. What Kansas did is they proved that Oklahoma is not always opportunistic. And almost if you allow Oklahoma to run the football, which Kansas did. Oklahoma got 5 yards per carry, 55 carries, 269 yards. Kansas said, look, we're going to try to shut down the passing game. We're going to take advantage of the elements best that we can and force OU to throw the ball. And then Dylan Gabriel, your standout star senior quarterback, was bad. If you're Oklahoma State, you say, look, we're going to open up a couple running lanes. We're going to let OU run the ball a little bit. Oklahoma didn't score 33 points against Kansas because the offense was clicking on all cylinders. They did that because the run game was there. Because Kansas, their run defense was susceptible that Saturday. But Oklahoma played a very uncharacteristically bad brand of undisciplined football. 11 penalties for 101 yards. That's in my notes. 3 turnovers in my notes here. A poor passing game. 19 first downs. 29 minutes of possession to Kansas 31 is not bad. It's not like Kansas just held the football the whole time. Oklahoma State doesn't have to play not to lose to win this game. What the Cowboys can do is allow OU to feel comfortable enough that they need to run the ball 56 times, get out and force the hand. If Oklahoma State gets down by 10, 14 in this, I don't see Alan Bowman being a good enough quarterback to bring it back. I don't. But if you can say, hey, OU will give you a little bit with the run game, we're going to lock down the pass game. Good luck Dylan Gabriel trying to go win it at the very end. He did it against Texas, couldn't do it against Kansas. That to me says so. The fact that Oklahoma was not opportunistic says a lot. And I haven't gotten to the biggest reason that Oklahoma State is going to win this game. Oklahoma's leading rusher, 385 yards this season. Oklahoma State's, and I know there's a committee there for OU. Oklahoma State's leading rusher is the best player in the conference right now, Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon II, 141 carries, 1,087 yards, and 10 touchdowns this year. That's almost enough for me to be wholly convinced, Oklahoma State's going to be able to win this game. And I may have not even gotten to the best part yet. The part? That word. And that's the fact Oklahoma State playing at home in the final Bedlam matchup. Kansas owns the eternal scoreboard against Oklahoma. And if you think Mike Gundy, who has not been good against the Sooners, if you think Mike Gundy doesn't want that, you're more than misconstrued. You're an idiot. That means everything in this game. You could probably ask Gundy and he would say, it used to be a true rivalry, a big rivalry, yeah. But I know how much the eternal scoreboard, this game will not happen again. I know how much that means to Mike Gundy. This game won't be played for 2 decades or more. This is the last time we'll see Bedlam. Oklahoma State's won 4 straight, 45-13, 48-34. One of those have in common, blowouts, one of them on the road. At home, pristine this season, outside of South Alabama. And now with a win, they'll have the edge on Oklahoma and a clear path to the Big 12 championship game. I said it preseason. I was so confident in it. I went to FanDuel and took their team over for wins. I don't think this Oklahoma State roster is elite. I don't think it's great. Look at the receiving core. Those guys are struggling. Look at Alan Bowman. 8 touchdown passes in 8 games, 5 interceptions. 3-headed quarterback at the beginning of the year was terrible. People were saying fire Gundy. And here they are on the doorstep of making it to a Big 12 championship. It's not a good roster. The coaching staff seems to have its holes, but now they're handing the ball off to Ollie Gordon. The defense has stepped up. And to me, called it at the beginning of the year, this is a mediocre roster that should go 9-3, 10-2 with the way the schedule stacked up for Oklahoma State. Here they are with a chance to do it. I think Oklahoma State gets the best of Oklahoma this Saturday. Coming up, can Kansas State do the same thing? Can Kansas State shock Texas? This, Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is where I go to make money. Prize Picks is the number one way to turn $10 into $250. You can go right now. Basketball season on the way. NBA here. Pick a combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill, comedian Andrew Schultz. You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in Prize Picks community each and every week. Take 2 players, combine their stats, boom, Prize Picks. Make money. Make money. I, right now, will go in and find a player's stats, like a Travis Kelce over 5.5 receptions. I'll take a Nikola Jokic for more than 10 rebounds. Cash. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100 right now at Prize Picks. Kansas State and Texas this weekend. I am so excited about the idea of this game. K-State goes on the road, this game being played in Austin. That's not easy. It's a sellout game. Kansas State will play 9 straight sellout crowds this year, and it's 11 a.m. That's the weirdest, toughest part of this game. Texas right now, a favorite at FanDuel of -4, over-under set at 50. Remember, no Quinn Ewers in this game. No Arch Manning. Still don't know where that guy is. Instead, we get Malik Murphy against Will Howard and Avery Johnson. Now, Texas has half a quarterback. Kansas State has 2 of them that are possibly all Big 12 caliber. K-State has won 3 straight games since going on that funky road game against Oklahoma State and dropping that 29-21 decision against a team at Oklahoma State that looks a lot better now. That loss looks a lot better. K-State's last 2 games combined 82-3. 82-3. Now, Texas just beat BYU 35-6, but let's not fool ourselves. BYU is not that good of a team. They're not that good of a team. At night, they're spectacular. During the day, they're maybe the worst team in the Big 12. Texas went on the road, struggled against Houston. If Houston gets the right call on a spot inside the 10-yard line, they have a chance to drop Texas to a 2-loss team. Instead, the Longhorns 7-1, the Wildcats 6-2, both teams 4-1 in Big 12 play. Here's why I like Kansas State. They win the quarterback battle not just once, but twice this week. DJ Giddens, if you pull his numbers up to where Jonathan Brooks is, carry-wise, Jonathan Brooks has about 30 more carries. DJ Giddens only behind Brooks by 200 yards in that span. I know it's not a direct correlation, but Giddens would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 880 yards and 9 touchdowns to Jonathan Brooks, 923 yards and 7 touchdowns. So there's not a really dramatic gap in the run game between these two teams. And more than anything, Avery Johnson can run the ball better than anybody else, to me, on the field, because of what the quarterback can bring you when it comes to the ground game. For that reason, I like Kansas State to have an opportunity here. And look, don't be fooled. This is a heart pick. Not a gut thing. I don't think, I've got an edge. I've got a sneaky edge where Kansas State can beat on Texas. No. But I kind of need this. We need this as a conference. So I'm going to take Kansas State this week to not just cover, but to win outright. Kansas State is 10th in the country offensively in 3rd and 4th down success. They're great late. They're 29th in field position, which, for all intents and purposes, being outside the top 25 in a category, let's call that okay. 29th is not bad, but compared to the rest of their stats, they've been pretty darn good this season. Their efficiency on the pass, 29th. Efficiency in the rush is 4th in the country. Their field position being 29th only to me says good things about Kansas State. They're going to have to get a couple bounces to go their way in this game. But if they do, the Wildcats can win it outright. Other big games this weekend in the Big 12. I say big games. I'm going to go across a couple that I think most people won't be glued to. ESPN Plus, Houston at Baylor. Baylor a 3-point favorite. I think Houston not just covers. I think they win outright. Baylor's done. This team's given up. I expect a coaching change sometime next season in Waco. UCF and Cincinnati. UCF favored by 3.5 in Cincinnati. Give me John Rice Plumlee and company. I like Emory Jones. I don't think he's the worst quarterback in the Big 12, as some have said. However, I'm going with UCF and Gus Malzahn in this matchup. Then the two big ones in the night slot. Kansas at Iowa State. I'm going with Iowa State here. Iowa State will win this football game. 2.5-point favorites. I know Kansas just got done beating Oklahoma, and I've sang Kansas praises too. They did a really good job of making sure Oklahoma was not opportunistic, but Iowa State has won 3 straight games in the Big 12. They've all been by double digits as well. They are blowing teams out. 2 of those on the road. You're playing a night game at Jack Trice Stadium, to me, the second scariest place to play in the Big 12. I'm going with Iowa State outright in this game, and they cover 2.5. 49-degree weather, just football. I hope Jack Trice is packed. I hope it's rocking, and I expect Rocco Becht and company, despite not being as big name as Jason Bean and company, will go out and get the win. Still like Eli Sanders. Still like Rocco. And that's why they win. Now, for the night slot, it's the same time, but Fox, BYU at night, West Virginia at night, 8 p.m. kickoff on the East Coast, 7 p.m. that is, 6 p.m. kickoff Central Time. BYU is going to go with a backup quarterback here. Keaton Slovis is going to be out of the game. West Virginia, a 71% chance to win this, and I do believe that's exactly what happens. I think West Virginia does win this game. Now, 10 points, still a little much for night BYU. I don't know if I can exactly trust anybody against night BYU. This is move. This is now move. I had 10 in my notes. I go to the ESPN app, 13.5 in favor of West Virginia since BYU announced Keaton Slovis will be out. I don't think West Virginia covers 13.5. I see BYU losing this game by 7, 8 if things get funky, but they at least put up a fight without Keaton Slovis. This team's not going to roll over without a Keaton Slovis who has been good, not great. 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. You didn't lose a Heisman candidate. You lost Keaton Slovis, whose numbers are almost the exact same as Rocco Becht, if not a little bit worse. I like Rocco Becht a lot, by the way. I'm going to go with West Virginia outright. I think BYU makes it a game. That's a complete Big 12 rundown, baby. This is a big Saturday. 7 games. 6 games now on Saturday after last night's TCU and Texas Tech. This has been and always will be. I'll see you on Sunday. We'll recap the whole thing. Locked on. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.